Xbox boss Phil Spencer retired, which means a new president is stepping up. That's right, it's John Halo. Welcome to Triple Click, where we bring the games to you. And I'm just kidding, it's actually Asha Sharma. But what is her deal? And what is she going to do when she takes on the role of Xbox president? Let's discuss. I'm Jason Schreier.
I'm Kirk Hamilton.
And I'm Maddy Myers. Hello.
Hi. Hello.
I hope you guys survive the great blizzard of February 2026.
You know, it keeps snowing. I think I'm good on it at this point. I kind of missed it for a few years.
Yeah, you're good. No more. You're good on snow. Like, come on, man.
I think I'm good. It was nice for a little while there. Winter Wonderland, all that. But I'm okay with it at this point. I think we can cut it off here for the season.
So in my town, we got 24 inches this week.
Oof.
And man, I had this experience when after it was over. So usually I shovel my own driveway, but this time it was so much that I hired someone to come in and shovel it. And then I came and checked it out at night once it had stopped snowing. And I was walking on my driveway, and it felt like I was Moses parting the Red Sea, because there were these two giant like tsunami level waves of snow. Literally, it was 5 feet of snow on each side of my driveway. It was the most insane thing I've ever seen.
Were these piles of snow generated with a snow blowing machine or with a shovel?
I thought you were going to say generated with AI, and I was going to say, yeah.
Were these real?
They were made by ChatGPT.
Was this some
I believe
sort
the
of
snow is still in the real
slop?
world.
It was a shovel. It was the guy with the shovel who was doing a bunch of houses in our neighborhood. Yeah, it was wild.
That's hardcore. Our driveway was plowed with a snowblower, and we only got 18 inches. So clearly they were lazy compared to whatever mastermind with a shovel was shoveling Jason's 24. That's
It's true. Yeah.
impressive.
Yeah. Hey, did you know that we are a listener-supported podcast? Did you guys know this? I just found this out about...
I did.
It's news
Yeah,
to
I
me.
knew.
Yeah,
I found it out the last time that you just found it out.
last week I found out for the first time. Episode 293. It took me 293 episodes,
Yep,
not 294. That would be embarrassing if it took me 294 episodes.
You're focusing on other things. It's understandable.
We are a listener-supported podcast. You can support us by going to MaximumFun.org/join. And by joining the Maximum Fun Network, which supports us, you not only make the show possible, you also get access to monthly bonus episodes that we do for you, for all you fine subscribers out there. We just ran one for January about the TV show Pluribus, and we are about to run one for February about the documentary King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters, which we will be watching and talking about. So look forward to that soon if you are a subscriber. And lots more to come, more stuff this year about games, about shows, about The Sopranos, and a whole backlog. If you are not a member and you haven't listened to bonus episodes, we got a whole backlog full of cool stuff. So go to MaximumFun.org/join, and you too can listen to those bonus episodes. All right. So there's a big game coming out this week. It's called Resident Evil Requiem. We are not going to be talking about that today. We are going to be talking about that next week instead, which I think will be good, because it'll mean that listeners will have had a chance to play it while as we're talking about it. Because there's some big news that we should get into. This isn't a news podcast, of course, but sometimes we like to talk about big major news, especially when it involves one of Maddy's predictions being proven correct.
That's true.
So,
that's the main reason we're talking about it.
Oh, yeah,
Otherwise, it barely would have mattered.
Yes, all news through the lens of our predictions.
Correct.
yeah, I mean, otherwise it would be insignificant. Like, I don't think anyone would
doesn't
be
really
talking
matter.
about it.
Well, that's kind of
if not
how
for-
I think all games journalists are orienting all their coverage. Is just around whether or not we're getting
Yeah, I mean,
predictions
Polygon's
right.
headline, Maddy Myers' prediction proved correct.
Yeah, I gotta say,
And the subhead said what actually happened.
I really had no inside info. I know that's our rule for our predictions, but this was just a real shot in the dark. But Jason, why don't you tell the people what we're even referring to?
Phil Spencer, the president of Xbox Gaming, resigned and will be replaced by a woman named Asha Sharma, who is in her mid-30s. She was an Instacart executive. She's been at Microsoft for a couple of years now in the AI department, core AI specifically, AI platforms. And so most people are not familiar with her and learned a lot about her over the last week. We'll get into that. But yes, the headlines declared Maddy Myers correct. Phil Spencer out. Phil
Maddy
out.
gets a point confirmed. First point of the year, maybe?
What's interesting is a big picture of Maddy on the front page, not of Phil Spencer.
No
Xbox
my
logos,
face
just
was
Maddy
all
looking
over
happy.
every mainstream gaming website this week. I was in the news.
Yeah.
What's funny about this is that there had been rumors, I think for like a solid 2 years now, ever since Xbox really went on this current path of decline, that Phil Spencer would be out. And the rumors never proved to be true until very recently. In fact, I remember hearing at I think it was DICE 2 years ago, so almost exactly 2 years ago, people were gossiping about oh, Phil's set to resign, Phil's set to retire. So now it's actually happening. Hilariously, I actually just ran into Phil at DICE 2 weeks ago. He told me he was in Japan snowboarding on vacation, and said I had zero clue that he was about to say that he was going to retire. So Phil Spencer is no longer at Xbox. Sarah Bond, who was kind of primed as his successor, is also no longer going to be at Xbox. Matt Booty, the other member of their triumvirate, is sticking around to be Asha Sharma's lieutenant and run the studios and run the content, essentially. And nobody really knows what this is going to mean. We can venture some guesses, but it is certainly a new era for one of the three console makers, and I believe now the biggest company in gaming, certainly in terms of employees, after the acquisition of Activision Blizzard. What'd you guys make of this? What'd you think of this news when you first saw it?
I was shocked.
Maddy, did you immediately think, oh man, I want a prediction?
No, because I always forget. I think
forgot,
we all
okay.
do
Yeah.
this. We all forget all the
I
predictions.
I couldn't tell you most of my predictions.
But that's what's fun about the predictions,
That's
though,
the
is
charm.
that we forget what they are. We just get to enjoy going through the year. And then someone else, one of our wonderful listeners, was actually said to me, didn't one of the Triple Click members predict that Phil Spencer would resign? And then I looked it up and I was like, yeah, not only did one of us do it, it was in fact me. Great news for me. I was, so like a lot of people, I initially really zoomed in mentally on Asha Sharma's prior job at Microsoft, which is that she was part of an AI division there. And that made me really curious about what that means for Xbox going forward. Obviously, we still don't know, but she, when I described this to my wife, I described her as an AI executive. And Dina was like, are you telling me they hired an AI? And I was like, oh, no. Okay.
She's a really advanced AI agent.
I was like, that would be wild.
You should see what Claude can do these days. Made a whole lady.
I mean, so many
hired-
people are just using AI for so many aspects of their jobs, and it's basically.
I think it was a reasonable assumption on Dina's part, although she was extremely horrified at the prospect of this. It's worth noting. And I was like, oh, no. She's just someone who specializes in this at Microsoft, and that indicates something about who they're putting in charge at Xbox, or at least that's what I had presumed. But her introductory letter, we kind of have access to everyone's goodbye letters and introductory statements about this changeover. She has this little mention about how she doesn't believe in AI slop. She even uses that term. And I thought that was interesting that she kind of felt preemptively defensive about her previous job. I don't know what that means, but that was one of the first moments of reflection for me in looking into this. And I know we've talked before about AI.
Well, hold on. I don't think that's like an indictment on her previous job.
Sure.
I don't think that's what she was saying. So the exact quote is, quote, "We will not chase short-term efficiency or flood our ecosystem with soulless AI slop." She is very much still on board with AI. She's just saying we're not going to churn out a bunch of games that are just made by ChatGPT or whatever, or Copilot.
Would have been kind of sweet if she had affirmed that she was going to do those things.
That would be
she's like
extremely
only
funny.
Short-term returns.
Soulless AI slop only.
Nothing but garbage.
Yeah,
for all of you. Enjoy it. Lap it up, you little pigs.
If it's got a soul, we're taking it out.
But no, she's definitely not
course.
criticizing core AI. Microsoft is an AI-driven company right now. Over the last 3 years or so, they've become that, and this is very much in that vein. So no, I don't think that's her kind of indicting her previous title.
Yeah.
I think that statement is a little bit interesting because it indicates that all the way to the most upper echelons of AI companies, they are aware of this current backlash that most people hated that anytime someone says there's going to be AI, and they have now started embracing terms like AI slop to differentiate themselves, to assure people we're not going to do this. Now, I mean, do not really buy that, or it's like that's definitely not convincing on its own that someone would say that, because everybody has an incentive to say that. But I do think it's interesting that it's clear that the backlash, the very widespread distaste for this stuff, has registered at the highest levels, and they are trying to change their messaging accordingly.
Yeah, definitely. I think especially someone who's coming in and is pretty young. I believe she's 36. She's definitely in tune with like what people are saying about AI. As part of their messaging and their PR strategy, Microsoft, I think, put a lot more emphasis on her Instacart and Home Depot background than her background as a Microsoft AI executive, which is also worth noting. So yeah, I read that less as them trying to distance themselves from AI and more as the fact that it's not really relevant to them. Like AI is relevant behind the scenes in game development in that a lot of people are using it for various kind of efficiencies, writing code, maybe using research, all sorts of other just kind of random things, maybe helping with automation of testing, that sort of stuff. But nobody's using it to actually generate games. And so if that was actually possible, maybe this would go in a different direction. I want to talk a little bit. I want to kind of segment this a little bit. I want to talk about why this happened, and then we can talk a little bit about the future of Xbox under Asha Sharma and who she is and what's next. So a little bit of background here. We've talked about this quite a bit on the show, so I'll make this quick. But basically, Xbox has been in a very bad state over the last 2 or 3 years. They have not seen much growth other than from Call of Duty, and this last Call of Duty tanked. So that was really bad news. And part of me wonders if that's related to the timing of all of this. Is there one cash cow not being quite as cash heavy? By the way, Call of Duty tanking still means it's like the number 2 game of last year. I was
going to ask what that
put
means
things in perspective.
Specifically.
Yeah. Normally, Call of Duty sells 40 bajillion copies, and this time it only sold 20 bajillion copies. That sort of thing.
That doesn't sound like a line going up to me. That sounds like a line going down.
The line did not go up. The line. I don't know if you guys remember this.
Unacceptable.
The line did not go up to the extent that Activision came out like a week after it came out and was like, hey, after this, we're no longer going to do 2 Modern Warfares in a row or 2 Black Opses in a row because that didn't work for us. So it was not a good situation for them. But also, we've seen a lot of just kind of very confusing messaging, a lot of problems for them, a lot of pressure put on them from Microsoft. They've essentially gone multi-platform, are releasing almost all of their games on PlayStation. The Xbox brand is kind of in the toilet. Nobody's buying the consoles anymore. A lot of people are questioning if Game Pass has devalued games overall, even though it's been a pretty good deal for customers. And they're just in a bad situation. They've been laying people off by the truckload, and shutting down studios.
They're using all 3 vehicles to lay people off. Forklifts,
tens
trucks.
of thousands, right at this point?
Tens of thousands for Microsoft. I think thousands for Xbox specifically. They're shutting down studios, canceling games. The most recent bloodbath was last summer when they canceled Perfect Dark and a bunch of other things and shut down some studios. So they're in a bad spot, and it feels like it's not clear. I mean, we'll never know until we hear it directly from the people involved. And I certainly don't have the reporting to know the answer to this yet. But it certainly seemed like Phil wanted to leave. The timing of this and how much of that was up to him versus Microsoft saying, all right, it's time to say goodbye. We don't know the answer to that just yet. But we do know that Xbox needs a turnaround. So that's where we are now. And so I guess if you want to look at the kind of silver lining to these moves, it's that, hey, we're going to have some fresh blood in here, maybe some new ideas for what Xbox could look like, maybe some kind of strategy that actually leads to better games and a better environment for the people involved. So I don't know. Sometimes new blood can be a good thing, I suppose.
It can be. I also think it's interesting that the blame for all of those issues that Jason just helpfully recounted doesn't seem to be fully falling at Phil Spencer's feet, at least in terms purely of the messaging that we're getting, like the corporate letters and that sort of thing. It's not, no one's acknowledging it in that type of way. And I also think it's interesting that some of the blame seems to be put on Sarah Bond, at least in like the reporting that we've seen about it. Tom Warren at The Verge did a story where he spoke to some sources, unnamed, of course, about just the scuttlebutt internally. And a lot of those sources were pointing to Sarah Bond as the person who was behind the "This is an Xbox" campaign, which kind of, one could argue, devalued the importance of the console, maybe led to fewer people buying it. I don't know that any of us knows for sure that that was entirely on her. I'm not saying it wasn't. I just think it's interesting that her name is the one that's popping up as opposed to Phil. And I don't know. I'm not sure what to make of that. I read that story and was really like, I feel like this is coming out of nowhere for me. I had kind of just assumed a lot of these things were Phil Spencer's decisions. And now that both of them are leaving, we're suddenly being told that it was Sarah Bond's decisions, and Phil seems to be getting a hero's send-off.
At the very least, it seems an acknowledgement that that was a disastrous campaign, and or at least that it was a bad thing. I mean, that you would feel the need to hang it on anybody. And it does, I get the sense from Tom's report at least, that that was what was happening in that article, is this albatross was being hung around her neck. And it does show, I guess, that they see internally that that was a mistake.
So, okay, this is one of those situations where there's a story, it's got anonymous sources, it doesn't say how many people the reporter spoke to, and it doesn't say what positions they were in, which is a little tough to deal with, tough to untangle, because I can provide a little bit of insight on how Microsoft works, and specifically how Xbox works, which is that it's humongous and full of factions, and the factions are all playing politics to a degree that no other company has to deal with. Like, if you imagine politics, every company has corporate politics. If you imagine them like to an nth degree, that is what it's like at Xbox and Microsoft. And so in Xbox specifically, over the last few years, there have been two divisions, essentially, Matt Booty's division and Sarah Bond's division, and both of them reported up to Phil. And then on top of that, you have all these other kind of tentacles, right? Like you have the finance department, which kind of reports all the way up to Amy Hood, the CFO of all of Microsoft. And so that operates almost on its own. And then you have marketing, which is its whole kind of like a very like scattered and just kind of like dotted lines and reporting trees all over the place. So it's a bit of a mess. And so I think something that Tom Warren said in his story is that he had heard from multiple people that Sarah Bond was difficult to work with and that she was divisive at the company. And I think that if you talk to, I don't know, 5 people and they're all in Matt Booty's division, then you might hear something very different than if you talk to 5 people and they all are in Sarah Bond's division. And even within Sarah Bond's division, there are people who are close to her and people who aren't, and there are people who like played the politics game and people didn't. And it gets into this very messy territory where it becomes a very difficult company to even wrangle and report on. And I say this as someone who's talked to a lot of people there. And so when you're trying to kind of unravel those politics, it can get a little bit messy. And I think that report certainly got mixed reactions because it felt like it was putting all the blame on Sarah Bond. My question for that report was, how many people did the reporter talk to and where were they, would be the questions that I would ask there. And I wish there was a clearer answer to that.
Would you draw a distinction in this report between the stuff you're talking about just then, the sort of she's difficult to work with, and the more factual stuff, like, for example, that Xbox Everywhere was a strategy that she had been pursuing? It does sound pretty unequivocally from this as though it was her project, and that seems like something that's a little easier to confirm.
I don't think there's any single project at Xbox that can be like pointed at a single person, because all of them have to go through, again, this is the company, like so much bureaucracy and so many meetings and so many approvals that it's like you have everything has a million different hands on it. And then when something fails, then everybody wants to point to, oh, it was their responsibility. And when it's a success, then, oh, it's everybody. Oh, it's mine. That's
very helpful to keep in mind when reading this piece then.
And at the end of the day, so Microsoft has what's called Senior Leadership Team, and that's a group group of people. I don't know exactly how many, but it includes Phil Spencer and Matt Booty and Sarah Bond, and they're ultimately like making calls and having all these strategy meetings and stuff. So you look at something like Xbox Play Anywhere. Maybe Sarah Bond was in those meetings advocating for that. I don't know. Or sorry, not Xbox Play Anywhere. This is an Xbox, that campaign.
Very similar, but
yeah, I was going to say,
different.
can't blame you for mixing those up.
I cannot say one way or another whether Sarah Bond was in those meetings being like, this is mine, like, this is what I want to fight for, this is the messaging we want to use, et cetera, et cetera. But I do know that, like, those sorts of things are discussed by that entire senior leadership team and ultimately, like, has to go through approval. Like, if Phil Spencer was like, no, I don't want to do that, then it would not happen.
Can I ask you something, just a more kind of big picture question that some listeners might be wondering? And I know you've talked to a lot of people at Microsoft, so Jason, I guess I'll start with you. But what is it that you think that Microsoft wants to accomplish right now? Like, where do they see themselves? Like, given where they are and what's happened and how things are going, what would you think their plan is?
For Xbox specifically, you mean? Like,
yeah,
what's
like what do they
Microsoft's-
want for the video? Yeah, sorry, for Xbox, for video games.
Well, so Microsoft, so all of the last 3 years really comes down to the fact that after the Activision Blizzard acquisition and after Microsoft started doubling down on AI, Microsoft put more financial pressure on the Xbox org. Like, that is straight up what happened. Basically, Microsoft said, hey, you guys are now humongous. You just cost us $70 billion on Activision. Why aren't you showing the same profit? AM, they call it accountability margin, which is basically their way of saying profit margins. Why aren't you showing the same margins as Azure and like all these other kind of more profitable divisions within the company? And that is what has led to all these decisions. That's what's led to layoffs, because you got to cut. If you want the margins to go up, you can cut costs, right? If revenue isn't going up. That's what led to releasing games on PlayStation, et cetera, all this other stuff. And so I think if you ask Microsoft, what do you want from Xbox? The answer is get that growth, get those profit margins up to where the rest of the company is. As far as what like Asha Sharma wants from Xbox, and maybe we can use this as a pivot to kind of get into talking about her. I think she's been provided with this mandate of like, get this brand back on track, figure out a strategy. And we don't really know until she starts talking to people, and probably until she starts trying to understand what all this is and what she's in for. We don't know what her strategy is and what her vision for the future of Xbox is. But I'm not sure you could say, like, what was Phil Spencer's vision for Xbox? It was so scattered that it seemed to change every couple of years. I'll never forget that, like, when they first announced, I don't know if you guys remember this, it was 2 years ago, they announced, hey, we are putting 4 games on PlayStation, not Indiana Jones, not Starfield, and then cut to like 7 months later, and they're like, oh, Indiana Jones is coming to PlayStation. About that previous thing, oh, now all of our games are coming to PlayStation. So it was kind of this strategy that just didn't even seem like Phil knew exactly what he was planning to do with it. To be fair, he did say, we'll say at the time, we'll see like where the business goes, like where this leads to. This is a test case. We'll see where it leads from there. But it certainly didn't seem, especially over the last few years, like they had a very cogent, clear strategy in mind.
It did seem like there was a lot of focus on Game Pass, insofar as I can point to any one strategy that Xbox has had, and if I had to stake a prediction that they'll continue to have, and something like Call of Duty's sales, which we were talking about at the top of this topic, seems like I could speculate. For example, the Call of Duty's sales, we might know. We don't know whether it specifically didn't drive sales of Game Pass subscriptions, but that seems plausible, right? Like if it didn't sell as well. And that also is like why the Activision Blizzard acquisition happened. Like that's the argument for it, right? Is like increase the catalog, make that catalog on Game Pass more valuable, get month over month income from people, because that's just always going to be steadier than the ups and downs of the games industry that we talk about constantly. Like that to me always seemed like the core strategy, or at least a pillar of it that I could understand, while also being able to see that it was never going well. It seemed like it plateaued a few years ago and hasn't had the growth that they're hoping for. And we can point to some data points on that, like the recent changes in pricing structure to the Xbox Live accounts that folks were talking about. I think a year ago is when they rolled those changes out. Those felt kind of shady to people, like just suddenly changing prices and not making it entirely clear how each of the accounts worked. It was confusing even to me. and I read the Xbox pages constantly.
Oh, right. That was the thing where it's like, maybe you get this game, but not this game. Okay, that was messy.
It just kind of felt like disorganized, and also the whole concept of like, what are each of the different tiers of Xbox subscriptions? What do you actually get out of each of them? Why is that opaque? Why has that ever been hard to understand? Shouldn't that have been streamlined years ago and made as simple as possible, in the same way that any other subscription service we can name is, where it's like, it's just one subscription, and maybe there's a version without ads. I mean, I'm obviously comparing it to movie and TV subscriptions, but that's the thing that Game Pass is always trying to compare itself to, right? Marketing wise. So how do you make it as easy as possible for people? I feel like I'm mentally laying the blame for that on Phil. I don't know if that's fair, but that's how my perception is, because Phil has so often been the person coming out on live streams and in marketing events talking about Game Pass, talking about how that's the future of Xbox, and talking about Xbox as like a software platform, a games platform that can be anywhere. Maybe not that this is an Xbox aspect, but just the idea of Xbox as a platform rather than trying to sell consoles. And that feels like a reason for Phil to either get pushed out or perhaps look at his situation and be like, I'm going to do something else with my life. I get that.
It also sort of maybe explains why you would bring in someone like Asha Sharma, who seems to me to be, I don't know a ton about her, but a fairly skilled operator who's been at a lot of big companies and like developed platforms. Instacart, she was at Facebook. She seems to be pretty good at what she does, and that is like developing platforms. And I don't know if she's going to be focusing on Game Pass, but it kind of makes sense that you would bring in someone like that who knows how to take a platform and build it into something more.
Yeah. So who is Asha Sharma? Her introductory letter to everybody was very confusing and full of contradictions, which might not be the best start, because she says in one line that this like commitment to gaming and getting back to blah, 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 blah starts with focusing on Xbox and the return, like going back to console, focusing on a console. And then in the very next line, she talks about how gaming is everywhere, including PC and mobile and all these other, like this ecosystem beyond platforms. So not really clear what she's going to do.
Kind of the same messaging issue that I feel like Phil faced these many years, where I feel like he was facing the exact same contradictions every time he was doing these presentations.
100%.
Is this an unsquarable circle for platform holders? Because it seems to me, at least, that the future of gaming is multi-platform.
Yeah.
It is everywhere. And that if your company has been in the past reliant on this console that you sell and these exclusives that you build in order to sell the console, like you just have to keep paying lip service to that. And like you just have to be with one foot in each of these worlds. And it does just endlessly apparently create that contradiction.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, you have this issue where Xbox was behind in the console race and had to do everything it could to try to catch up. I mean, really, the death knell for Xbox was when they started releasing all their games on PC, which was, I believe, 2016 or so, 2016, 2017. They essentially said, hey, we're going to put all the games on PC now, which made it unnecessary for anyone with a gaming PC to buy an Xbox at all, which just kind of is the beginning of the end for them. I mean, nobody really knows what the future of gaming is, whether it's platforms or ecosystems or consoles or just Roblox, and we'll all just be playing games on our Roblox systems from here on out. But you're right, Kirk. I think it is kind of it's a problem that cannot be solved, which is you are trying to simultaneously be a software company that reaches a ton of people, and now, especially with buying Bethesda and then Activision, you pretty much have to release those games across as many platforms as possible. Could you imagine Call of Duty, like if it was exclusive to Xbox? That would just be a disaster.
Wasn't that part of the FTC settlement?
They did, yeah. They promised it would be on PlayStation for X number of years. But regardless, even if they hadn't made that promise, it would make no sense to put Call of Duty to take your cash cow, the driver of growth for your gaming business, and restrict that and limit the number of sales. It would make zero sense. So how do you square that with this idea that your Xbox and and that's your platform, and you want to sell the Xbox. And it seems like what they're doing, the rumor is that they're planning this kind of new Xbox is going to be a PC, essentially, a living room PC, sort of like a Steam machine. We'll see how much that moves forward. But yeah, I mean, so that introductory letter didn't really answer any questions. I think Asha Sharma, so she had a town hall with Xbox employees on Tuesday morning. We're recording this the morning we're recording this. And also it was mostly just kind of puffery executive talk, and there were no straight answers. But she did say that she's got a lot to learn. She's going to have a lot of meetings with people. She's going to just be involved in all of this stuff. And I think something that is really worth getting into is her lack of gaming background. And that's in two ways. One is she has no experience working at any gaming companies. And two is she does not seem to be much of a gamer. In fact, in this town hall, she acknowledged, like, she was like, I wasn't playing games regularly until I considered this job, like however many months ago, a month or two ago.
She's like, but I mean, Elden Ring, you guys play that thing? Pretty fucking good game.
That would have been awesome if she had.
You guys heard of this game Threes? It's really addictive.
Hey, I would have been fine
stop.
with that. Yeah. I mean, this really made me feel like I felt for her, honestly, because I was like, do we have to have people still coming out and saying that they're a gamer just to be in one of these roles? I mean, look,
especially women, right?
Of course. I mean, that is a huge piece of this for me, because I also noticed that, like, Tom Warren got into this in his article, the fact that Sarah Bond was also not a gamer, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And that fact was more obfuscated when she came on board in 2017, because I think in 2017, that fact was kind of more of a point of contention. I mean, times were still kind of in the process of changing. And I think now it's at least possible for a female executive to take the reins and admit openly, hey, I don't play games, and not have people be immediately seizing on that as like the biggest issue with her. And instead people are seizing on the AI thing, which makes more sense to me. But
well, hold on. A lot of people have been seizing on the gaming thing.
Oh,
it's
interesting.
All over,
okay. Maybe this is because I'm not an X anymore, so I'm not seeing this kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, X specific. Well, because she started an X account and she's been talking about games and kind of addressing people in this kind of weird
Shouldn't
way.
do it on X.
Well, also she's saying weird things. Like, she said her favorite games. She asked everybody their favorite games, and she said hers were like Valheim and Halo, but she didn't say a number on the Halo. She just said Halo, and it was just she just talks about it in kind of this funky way.
She means Combat Evolved. That means Combat Evolved if you just say Halo.
Yeah, we all know she meant Halo 1.
Sure.
Yeah, no, that's tough, because then I'm like, okay, so maybe it does seem to her, and like somebody is whispering in her ear, perhaps even, I don't even know if this is all on her, that she needs to continue to pretend to be a gamer. I think that's sort of interesting that we haven't shaken that off. But then also, I don't ever want to carry water for Bobby Kotick, but the man is famously not a gamer. And I think it would be hard to argue that he wasn't financially successful as a gaming executive. So, like, it can be done. I mean, that's just perhaps one of the most notable examples.
Well, Strauss Zelnick, also CEO of Take-Two, makers of Grand Theft Auto. He is notably not a gamer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Those two have something in common that's a little bit different from Asha Sharma. And I'm trying to think what it is.
Yeah, it's interesting that people don't bring up their lack of gamer
but
status.
here's the thing. I don't want to defend the uppercase G gamers in the audience, and I don't think that anyone needs to be a gamer to step into this role and do a good job. And in fact, I think like not being a gamer can give you perspective that other people don't. I think the worry is when they don't have the gaming industry knowledge or background.
And she's so young. So it's like, how could she have the relevant work experience, I think is what you're getting at.
Well, it's the way I think of it is like, okay, let's say someone from Microsoft Finance came up to her and said, hey, you guys have this team of 75 people in San Francisco called Double Fine. Why is that existing? They don't make us any money. You should shut them down. And for her to look at like a P&L or something, she would be like, oh, okay. But if someone said to her, well, that's Tim Schafer's studio, would she know who Tim Schafer is? Like, does she have the kind of the knowledge to understand the ramifications of what would happen to Xbox and what they would look like and the PR disaster it would be if they shut down Tim Schafer's studio? Granted, she now has people around her, most notably Matt Booty, to help kind of answer these questions and help her learn things. And like I said before, one of the first things she said she's doing is going around and trying to learn about the business and understand it. But I think it takes a really long time to understand the kind of the nuances of the gaming industry. And if you come in with zero background whatsoever, and especially if you're pressured to make some big moves in your first few months without having any of that knowledge. That is a little bit of a question mark for me. So to me, it's like, I don't really think it makes one bit of difference what her gamer score is, or if she's ever, like, if she could tell you who Master Chief is versus what's his name, Dom from Gears of War or whatever. But it does to me make a difference if she like would not be able to tell you like who Tim Schafer is, or what people are saying about Starfield versus Fallout, or why people think New Vegas is the best Fallout, or any of this other kind of history and industry knowledge. Again, she has lieutenants around her. Hopefully they can help. Hopefully she gets in and immerses herself and learns about this stuff. But that lack of industry knowledge and experience is a little bit of a concern.
Well, you know, if you don't have this knowledge, you know who does have this knowledge? Microsoft Copilot. Just take this whole thing and dump it in there.
Not ChatGPT. We're talking about Cortana from her favorite game, Halo. So she's going to be going straight to the source. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, Jason, and I agree, of course. I have my concerns, but I also feel like the defense, obviously, is the same with any person who's a good leader versus bad. I feel like a good leader is always someone who has a good group of lieutenants around them and knows who else, especially when you're leading hundreds or thousands of people in this case. You cannot possibly be an expert in every single thing that all those people do. So the only good way that you could lead them would be to have good lieutenants who do know absolutely everything about each of their respective departments. Otherwise, you're screwed. And at that point, I'm like, it to me doesn't matter whether the person's a gamer or not. It matters whether they have the emotional intelligence to lead a team. Do I know that she does? No, I have absolutely no clue.
Right. And to that point, I think the kind of defense of someone with no industry knowledge and experience coming in is that they also don't have bad habits developed in the industry. And so they can come in, someone like Asha Sharma can come in and say, hey, why are we doing it this way? And people around her would be like, well, that's just how we always done it. Hey, we're Xbox, but why are we making consoles? They're not making money. They're not doing much for us. Why don't we try to go this drastically different route? And that kind of, I think, perspective can be a real benefit to the not having that industry knowledge.
Yeah, the vote against the lieutenants, or at least that questions the lieutenants' expertise, is the fact that it seems pretty clear that Microsoft's gaming division is a mess. I mean, this is just, it is like a rat's nest. It's a Gordian knot of contradictions that seem almost unsolvable. Anyone coming into this position would have a hell of a challenge ahead of them. So, you know, if the people who made that happen, or who in some way facilitated it, are also the people giving you advice. I don't know, like, she could be in a no-win situation.
I think she might be, honestly, because I feel like in this scenario, everyone around her, like Game of Thrones style, like has their own reason for wanting their job and their role, and their, you know, scrabbling for power to be preserved forever. So they're all going to mislead her. She has the disadvantage of not necessarily knowing this world. That's a benefit for the reasons that Jason outlined, but it's also a disadvantage internally because there's going to be all this drama and cliquishness that she's not familiar with. I feel like it would be hard for anyone, no matter who they are. But the fact that she's younger and therefore has less literal job experience makes me feel for her more so than I would have thought I would say about a core AI executive getting the Xbox CEO
I mean,
job.
what could anyone possibly do right now to salvage the Xbox brand? Like, it does feel like an unwinnable situation, which, I mean, maybe as someone who doesn't play games, she doesn't realize that, like, most games don't have unwinnable situations.
I mean, that's what I wondered when I saw the Sarah Bond news. I actually wondered.
No, Sarah Bond wanted the job.
You think? Because I was like, I wonder if she just left because she was like, screw this. I mean, I have no idea. But.
No, she was being set up as Phil's successor. I think that's pretty clear to say. I think that's pretty fair to say. It's both what we've seen online. It's what I've heard from people. Like, I think that's pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm. So as far as we know, she did actually just get screwed, and that's a shame for her, career-wise anyway.
Well, and then maybe in 5 years she'll feel less bad about that.
Yeah, also,
you know what? I'm glad that no one threw me that particular hot potato.
And she can cry about it in her, like, piles of money.
Oh, yeah, they've all got
Microsoft
golden parachutes.
Like,
They're all doing
the amounts that these people all made. I mean, that's the thing about Microsoft. I mean, to your point earlier, Kirk, about job preservation and that kind of part of it, is that one of the most infamous things about Microsoft. One of the kind of long running problems at Microsoft is that they pay really well, and there's also like all these incentives to keep your job because your stock will vest after a certain amount of time, and they also have this like lucrative retirement plan that I forget the exact details of, but basically you make it to a certain age and then your stock will all vest and you'll get X benefits for X amount of time. It's a whole complicated setup, but basically people are incentivized to just stay in a job and keep that job as long as possible, which is likely what a lot of people at Xbox are going to try to do by playing politics here, and fighting for why their division needs to keep their budget, and explaining to Asha Sharma, who's coming in again without much knowledge about this world, explaining why my division of Xbox actually should be getting this amount of money and should be getting this budget. And hey, of course we all need to stay, and just classic fiefdoms and politics and power brokering incoming.
Inertia just strikes me as a huge problem at any organization this size. It seems like a problem for them. Like they're still dealing with problems that were put in place by the last regime. Matrick, right? That was his name.
Yeah, the Don Matrick regime. Yeah.
Yeah, like so many things went wrong then. I mean, and when you make mistakes on that scale with this many employees and this many divisions as part of a unit as big as Xbox, like turning that ship clearly is, if not impossible, very, very difficult.
God.
Yeah, and whoever's at the top gets blamed for whatever happens. I mean,
Captain goes down with the ship.
Absolutely. I feel like if anything, we should be questioning how long Asha Sharma will manage to hold down this job. And I guess I'm implying it's impressive that Phil Spencer was there as long as he was, although I feel like you could look at it the other way and be like, well, it's such a terrible job, or seems so to me, that it's impressive that he was willing to eat shit essentially for as long as he did.
And he was beloved by a certain subset of gamers, and you can imagine, I don't know that this will happen, but a similar subset of gamers loathing Asha Sharma. And you can imagine, I could also imagine someone like her, young with a million options, very good at what she does in various fields, looking at this and being like, you know what, fuck this after a couple of years and going and working somewhere else.
Yeah,
Phil Spencer, it's worth noting, he was at Microsoft for 38 years, so literally a Microsoft lifer. I believe he's like 58 or 59 right now.
He could just be retiring, right?
That's what he is doing.
Yeah.
He's retiring. Yeah, I think that's what he said, at least. I mean, I'm sure he'll go and be on some boards and stuff and find some things to do. But he's a Microsoft lifer. He definitely had a reputation for being quite nice to people and generous, and just kind of like, he was definitely loved internally by people who just kind of like, I don't know, I'm sure some people were on his bad side, but it seemed like he was very generous as a leader. And I think one of the reasons he stayed in that position as long as he did, he was the head of Xbox, I believe, since 2014. So about 12 years he was the head of Xbox. Don Matrick left right after the Xbox One launched. So because
it went so well.
Here, I fixed it for you guys. Good luck to you.
Yeah. Could you imagine going back in time to 2013 when the Xbox One was like announced at that TV event, and it was like, hey, this is going to be a living room entertainment system, and also it's online only, and like you can't play used games on it. Imagine going back then and being like, hey, 13 years, Xbox still will not have recovered from this day.
We'll
still
never
be a
bounce
joke.
back from this.
God,
and it's still
crazy.
going to like essentially be the same argument, even though we don't think about it in those exact terms. We're still talking about Xbox the console versus Xbox the software, even right now. It hasn't changed at all.
Yeah, that's the time scale these companies operate on. It's like geological time.
Well, but it's also like Xbox has just done such a bad job of preserving their brand. Like if you look at the other two consoles, right? You think of the Nintendo Switch 2, and you think of that, okay, you know exactly what it is. You know what the software that's going to be on it. You know how Nintendo operates. You know exactly all the brands, and maybe not all of them are going to be winners, but you have a very strong idea. And same with the PlayStation, right? You have SIE and their studios, and maybe they're pursuing this like ill-fated games as a service initiative, and maybe they just shut down Bluepoint, which, man, another just kind of like blow in this industry, another devastating move. But you have an idea in your head of like, okay, you get a PlayStation 5, you're going to be able to play some exclusive games that are only on the PlayStation 5, and most of them are going to be like in this vein, and you have a good idea of what they're all going to look like. They're going to be like third-person action adventures about sad dads. And then then you look at Xbox, and what the hell is Xbox mean? It means everything from Call of Duty to Fallout to a console nobody's buying to like a weird handheld experiment thing to apparently this is an Xbox is just everything. They've just completely destroyed the brand in a way that I think is unrecoverable.
You can see some of those same things coming for Sony. As they, move to multi-platform, as they begin to sort of degrade what it means to have a PlayStation, because they're responding to that same force that we're talking about, that same maybe inevitable pressure of, consoles are just kind of going away and it's becoming a multi-platform world. What do you do with that when, right, having Uncharted be PlayStation exclusive used to be so important? So you can see some of those pressures kind of being applied to Sony. But yeah, it does seem as though they kind of made a few less bad decisions or just kind of bungled things up quite a bit less. They kind of kept things simpler, I guess, over the course of the 2010s than Microsoft did.
I mean, I think for them, their strategy is like live service games are coming to PC, but I think the sense I'm getting is that they're backing away from putting their exclusive console stuff, like traditional single player stuff, on PC.
Really? You think they can close that door? Is it they could start to say, okay, never mind.
I do.
Ghost of Tsushima 3 is only going to be on PlayStation?
I do.
Wow.
I do. Yeah.
Called shot.
And I mean, even if they don't, I mean, we're seeing like Wolverine is coming in September. They just announced it's coming September 15th. That's not going to be on PC. That's going to be on PlayStation 5 only.
You think that'll never come to PC?
I wouldn't be surprised if it never came to PC. But even if it does, like, again, it's just like you have a very strong idea of what that is, and you need a PlayStation to play it, at least for the indefinite future. And so there is a strong brand behind it. Yes, Kirk, to your point, it's possible that like the console ecosystem disappears as we know it and everything becomes multi-platform. But even then, I think if PlayStation continues on this course of just like making the games that they do, they still have a stronger brand than Xbox does. Not saying, I mean, PlayStation has its own problems that we could get into in a whole nother episode. It's just, I don't like the idea of what Xbox is, I feel like has just been completely like, we could all give 20 different definitions, and that marketing campaign, this is an Xbox, really defines what their biggest problem is that nobody knows what an Xbox is.
Right. I'm just sort of observing a strategic similarity in the way that PlayStation is now releasing The Last of Us to these big PlayStation exclusives are being put on PC, and in seeing the grumbling among PlayStation fans kind of saying,
yeah, I think that's going to stop. Is what I'm saying.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So that would be interesting if it did stop. They'd be kind of moving back toward that console strategy direction.
Yeah, and I don't know, like, I'm not sure how super successful those PC releases were. I'm not 100%
Seems like
sure.
trying to put something back in a bottle or turn back the clock. That doesn't seem like it would work to me.
Oh, stopping doing that? Well, it's like they never did it day and day, so the PC releases were always just kind of late to the party, and I don't think that successful in the first place. So, I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's going to be that big of a blow.
You mean like sales wise successful or
yeah, like
how
commercially
successful?
successfully. Yeah, I mean that's the big question. But yeah, I to me it's very possible that they put that genie back in the bottle, because it seemed like they were always kind of half dipping their toe in the water, like dipping their toe in the water, like half entering the pool in the first place with the staggered releases.
And it's also like who could say whether that's affecting PlayStation hardware sales or not. There's no way to know unless you actually plug it up and make that decision, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, I agree. I feel like PlayStation and Nintendo, you can more easily just be like, they are still focused on hardware. Yes, they have. Well, you could barely say Nintendo has a software online presence. I'm not even going to make that argument. They're focused on selling hardware still and making good games on it. But like Xbox, yeah, it's, who knows? Are we an Xbox? Is Triple Click an Xbox?
Well, and they also, I mean, on that same note, like both of those companies just have made Game of the Year quality games on a level that Xbox has just failed to do over and over again.
Yeah, their studios are just much stronger.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's going to be interesting to see. We'll certainly be keeping an eye on how Asha Sharma does and what this all leads to. But Yeah, I
Delete
don't
your
know.
X account, Asha. It's not going to get better.
That is,
Good advice for just about anybody.
yeah, that's good advice in general. She just started an X account. That's the funny thing. It's like just
You know what? I'm going to go ahead and say she should go ahead and delete it. I know Xbox
hope-
has an X in it, so I get how
There's
tantalizing
no
that
sunk
is.
cost. You can just
You can
delete
just
that
go.
thing. You can leave.
Hit the bricks. Just walk out.
I hope she had a fair warning of what she was getting herself into
There's
taking
no
this
way.
job.
I mean, we can't know her mind. I just feel like anybody who's not experienced with games can't possibly imagine. The three of us know all too well.
Man. Well, it'll be something to watch. All right, let's take a break and then we'll be back with one more thing.
Greatest Trek is the hit podcast about new Star Trek shows, and right now we're talking about all things Starfleet Academy.
Starfleet Academy is a Star Trek show made for everyone, from lifetime Star Trek nerds to folks who only like My So-Called Life in Dawson's Creek.
We even had a special writer and actor guest for the 5th episode this season, the hilarious Tawny Newsome.
Look, there's always something fun on the Greatest Trek feed because when the season's over, we're going back to watching the original series.
And hey, if you like old Star Trek, The Greatest Generation just had its 10th anniversary.
That's Greatest Trek for new Star Trek and Greatest Generation for the Star Trek you grew up on.
Both shows you can find on MaximumFun.org.
Ready, go.
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
We got this.
With Mark and Hal?
Oh, you knew this one.
We can't put that out as an ad.
We just did new episodes every week on MaximumFun.org or wherever you get your podcasts. Now it's hewn in rock.
Hewn in rock?
Yeah,
How do you hew something in rock?
with a chisel.
There's only one Hugh in rock, and it's Huey Lewis.
And the news is we got this with Mark and Hal is available every week on MaximumFun.org.
I walked right into that.
And we are back, and it's time for one more thing. Kirk, what's your one more thing?
My one more thing is A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, which I've been watching for the past couple of weeks. It just ended. I've watched all the way up to the finale. The second to last episode was quite exciting, a really great episode of TV, and I have not watched the finale, but I gather it's pretty much in line with the rest of the show, which is to say it's very good. It's a very good show, and I wanted to call it out on this show and recommend it in part because, Jason, you and I have a long and checkered history with Game of Thrones. We used to recap Game of Thrones on Kotaku Split Screen when it was still good, and we both kind of were pretty disenchanted with it over the course of its final cursed few seasons.
I think we started recapping it during those final seasons, actually. So it might have been that we started recapping it when it was bad.
I don't think that we recapped like the finale.
No, we did.
Maybe
Oh, we
did
definitely
because
did.
it was
Yeah.
right after I
Yeah.
joined. I know
Yeah.
that because you asked me if I wanted to
Okay.
do it, and I was like, "Oh, I stopped watching that show because it got bad." So
Yeah.
good luck,
Because
you
it got
too.
bad.
And I think
Yeah.
your like last couple of Game of Thrones eps were without me, of course, because I
That's funny.
hadn't seen the final
And
ones.
then we tried to recap Westworld, and we were like, "Oh God, this show!"
We're
Like on the
no.
second season of that.
Yeah,
show.
I remember people being like, "Oh, this is a bummer that you guys are just kind of disappointed by the show." But
Right. It was.
I mean,
That's true. We were, I guess, right. We were watching past the point where we stopped liking it, because then our recaps would just be like, "Wow,
yeah,
that sucks."
yeah,
And then which is not very fun in a recap show. So that was many years ago now, and I will say, in the interim, I tried to watch the House of Dragons.
House of Dragon.
House of the Dragon.
House
is
of the
that what it
Dragon,
is?
I believe, is called.
House of the Dragon, which I initially avoided because I was still way too burned out by Game of Thrones. And then I think when the second season was starting, there were some recaps and reviews saying, "Oh, it's pretty fun, it's pretty good." And I started it, and I honestly just found it to be a turgid bummer. I just couldn't get into it because it was all more of the same. Just, I don't know, like lots of people I don't care about being dicks to one another, too many characters, like a period of time I didn't find interesting, a lot of kings in throne rooms having these, it's very turgid. It was not an enjoyable show, and I just was not up for it, and I just fell off. I tried to watch it for a little while and stopped. A Night of the Seven Kingdoms is very much a corrective to that. This is a show run by Ira Parker, and it tells the story, I guess I should say it's based on, I think, a series of novellas by George R.R. Martin called The Tales of Dunk and Egg. I'm now looking it up to make sure that I get it right. And it's really great. I had no idea what to expect going in. I haven't read the novellas. I'm not really familiar with it, aside from knowing one very I would say, important spoiler fact about one of the two characters, Dunk and Egg, which I think is a kind of widely known thing and is actually sort of fairly clear even from the start of the show. But it is the story of Duncan the Tall, Sir Duncan the Tall, who is a hedge knight in the world of Westeros of A Song of Ice and Fire. A hedge knight is a kind of an unlanded knight with no lord who is just kind of roaming around, but is technically a knight and has been knighted and so has some privileges of the sort of knight class, like of that rank. And Duncan, Sir Duncan, he was the squire to a kind of wasted old knight who we only see in flashbacks in the show, but who did take him in and he says anyways knighted him at some point. But he's a pretty down and out guy, kind of out on his own, and he shows up at this tournament and he wants to kind of win in the tournament and get some kind of honor and get recognized and begin to kind of establish himself as a knight and get a toehold in the world. And on the way to the tournament, he meets a very small young boy who is named Egg, who is totally bald and very little. Duncan is notably huge. He is Sir Duncan the Tall because he is like a really big beefer dude. And so the two of them cut quite a kind of silhouette together. It's a little tiny kid and a really big tall man. And Egg talks his way into becoming Dunk's squire. Duncan is a very gentle soul. He is played wonderfully by Peter Claffey, an actor I was not familiar with, but who just nails it and is kind of the heart of the whole show, is this performance of Sir Duncan. He is a big, gentle, slightly slow, well-meaning man who just wants to make it in this world. And as you know, the world of Westeros is pretty rough. The thing that makes this show work is that it's very small scale. The whole thing concerns this one tournament. So he turns up at this tournament, and then you start to get a sense of the different, power dynamics, who's in charge. This is during the rule of the Lannisters. I'm not totally sure when in the timeline this is, though I believe quite a bit earlier than Game of Thrones.
Is it before or after Phil Spencer retired?
This is taking place right in the aftermath of Phil Spencer. He's just retired, and so things are...
Asha's reign has begun.
Asha actually is a character in Game of Thrones. There's a character named Asha.
All right, let's not confuse things further. It's in the past, anyways, a different era when the Targaryens are ruling but do not have dragons. So there aren't like dragons flying around like in House of the Dragon. It's more that the Targaryens are in charge. There are quite a few of them, and that's kind of it. And then there are various wars and rebellions that happen, but it's kind of a time of peace in the actual story. And then you get a lot of flashbacks to Duncan's history and, some various battles that did happen. But it's not a super action-packed show, aside from the second to last episode, which is like, a thrilling blood and mud Game of Thrones type battle. And it is... Once it gets to that point, it is as brutal and intense and really kind of horrifyingly violent as Game of Thrones can be. So I wouldn't say this show is like a total, change from those earlier shows. Like if you found some aspects of like those aspects of Game of Thrones to be kind of a turnoff, you will this probably still isn't your thing. But if you're like me, like if you found House of the Dragon to just be this big mess that was just too much like Game of Thrones, but kind of an also ran and kind of boring, this is great. It's a single character, one protagonist story. I mean, I suppose it's two protagonists because it's also about Egg, but it remains focused on just these two characters in this one place. There's a very clear narrative. He's trying to compete in this tournament, and then, events happen, and you're just following this story of this one person, and it feels like a novella. And man, it's the kind of thing we talk about a lot when we talk about these big franchise worlds, specifically about Star Wars, but also about Marvel, how you could tell the story of like a computer technician for S.H.I.E.L.D. in the world of Marvel who just has to like get a computer working in order to get information out to Iron Man or something. And then that could be a great story in the hands of the right person. It's very rare that you see it. And I would say this isn't quite that, only because there are some connections to some fairly big lore stuff in this story, but it feels like that. It has the sort of scope and the emotional scope, like the smaller emotional scope and just logistical scope of a smaller show, and that makes it work. So I really, really like it. I just think it's great. And like I said, it's anchored by a tremendous performance, and it's just a really kind of warm-hearted and a nice show, despite having quite a bit of dirty viciousness and awfulness, because this is still, of course, A Song of Ice and Fire. It is still Westeros.
It's also only half an hour per episode, you should say.
Yes,
which is-
some of them are a little bit longer, but it is really nice. That is a nice thing about it. They go up to like 37 minutes for an episode, but it really works. I don't know. For a show like this anyways, I don't need that 43, 47, 52, 59, 105. Like the thing that starts happening with some of these shows where I'm like, how long have I been watching this? It really just gets through it. And that also makes it feel, smaller in scope in a way that really works. Great show. Anyway, it's on HBO.
Yeah, the novellas are really good. You should read all the novellas now that you finished the first season, because I can vouch for them.
Yeah, I might. I would never have thought that I would be interested in going back and reading more of Martin's fantasy just because I was so burned by Game of Thrones. But this does make me want to go read them.
You say that as if we wouldn't do an episode on Winds of Winter as soon as it comes out.
Yeah, we would all want to read it.
I mean, no, I'm talking about like
we
other
would all
stuff.
fall back
No.
into the pit immediately.
Yeah, but
other
not
stuff.
that it'll ever
never
come
happen.
out.
So we're safe.
Right. My final thought is that HBO has had a lot of really good stuff lately. I've just been watching so many interesting things, like between, I guess, Max and HBO, between The Pit and this. And I mean, I like The Penguin. Like that was like a really pretty daring show. There's a lot of good programming going on there. And it just makes me feel even more trepidation about the fact that they're about to get acquired by somebody. Because of course, like the minute a network has kind of figured something out and is kind of nailing it, we have to accept that maybe they're going to get acquired and then just turn into chum for Netflix or something, or just ruined in some way or another, which would be a real shame. They've really got something going right now.
To be fair, I mean, HBO has been nailing it across all of these different parent companies. They've always been consistently.
Yeah, have you
there's
heard about
always
The
something on
Sopranos?
HBO.
It's pretty good. I've been checking out the show.
Even more recently, I mean, they had Succession. They had a lot of hits, even among the turmoil.
Right, but that's like they haven't been bought by a rival streaming company, like a rival media company. Like they were bought by AT&T. Like it was a little bit different.
Yeah,
Sure.
and I guess Kirk was making the point that even in the streaming era, they've put out some shows that have kind of driven conversation. Like The Pit is something that every week people are popping off about that show, and like that's hard to do nowadays.
And I feel like I've seen, especially in the last few weeks, Night of the Seven Kingdoms.
Same.
Like when I decided I would make it my one more thing, it was a couple weeks ago. And I was like, I bet some people won't know that this is good. And then in the time since then, I'm like, okay, well, now
People figured
everyone
it
is
out.
talking about this show. So it's not going to, everyone's heard about it because it kind of became more of a monocultural thing.
Maddy, what's your one more thing?
My one more thing, I actually also watched on HBO, although it's a New Yorker produced documentary. So if you want to watch it on a big TV, you can do what I did and check it out on HBO. But it's free on YouTube. It's called Icebreakers, and it's only like 22 minutes long. It's a really short documentary, and it's about ice skating. And specifically, it's about queer ice skaters and an event called the Gay Games that was created many years ago by a lesbian skater, and which just highlights queer skating. And I didn't really think about, I mean, this is kind of wild to say, like as a queer person, but like I really didn't think about the fact that figure skating as a competitive event is like an inherently straight event and therefore a very conservative event, especially if we're talking about paired skating in the Olympic events that we're familiar with, but also all the other events. And so if you're watching this documentary, pretty much all the skating that's featured, there's some solo skates, but there's like two men skating together or two women skating together in very romantic skates that are in the style of some of the like kind of faux romantic skates that we see of the man and woman, like classic Olympic skates that you're picturing in your mind's eye. And the documentary is about that and about how many queer skaters there are and how even though these many years, this type of competing still isn't considered okay. And also a lot of these skaters still feel like they can't come out and be part of the Olympics. I think part of that is because many of these countries, it's illegal to even say you're queer at all. But there's also just sort of that further artistic aspect to it where some of these skaters are like, I've never actually done a romantic dance with somebody who could conceivably be my romantic partner in real life. And I thought that the dances were really, really cool. First of all, like just from a performance standpoint, they're really cool to watch. but also the history of the gay games was really fascinating to me as well. And so it's worth watching. It's not super long, and I've really been enjoying watching the skating events with the Olympics. Alyssa Liu's skate is amazing. Not to pull a Kirk and just throw in another one more thing that people should check out.
No, by all means.
It's so good. People should
Kirk.
definitely check out her skating. But if you feel like, you can't get enough and you want to watch some other really cool performances, Icebreakers is what it's called. I watched it on HBO, but you can find it on YouTube as well for free. And the New Yorker produced it. So if you're trying to find it, there's a lot of stuff called that. So I would just say look for like Icebreakers, New Yorker, and you'll find the documentary.
Between this and the documentary about the gay rodeo, I feel like
I
you're
know,
really
right?
cornering the
This is like
gay
HBO
sport documentary.
recommending things to me now,
market.
and I'm like, all right, fine, I'll take it. I'll watch gay sports that I don't partake in and see what the scenes are.
Maddie, did you watch Yuri on Ice, the anime?
Of course. And after watching Icebreaker, Yuri on Ice, for the listeners' sake, is an anime featuring two male skaters who fall in love over the course of one season, and it's one season only, and it got canceled and will never come back. Kind of ends
But
on
now
a
there's
cliffhanger.
heated rivalry.
There is
so-
heated rivalry, which
A precursor to
doesn't
heated
involve
rivalry.
figure skating, but does have ice skates.
But I mean, it's still ice.
It's true. It's true. But yeah, Yuri on Ice is a really, really fun show. And while I was watching Icebreakers, I was actually thinking about Yuri on Ice a lot and being like, oh man, that was such a great anime. Really fun love story.
Very cute. Here's some more gay sports.
Yeah.
That's my favorite segment on ESPN. Gay sports Center every
I
morning.
love that, like the old school, like they just called it the gay games. I mean, like this was like before kind of the rise of like queer and like other terms. So because it was like invented so long ago, and they're still just calling it the gay games. And I'm like, I love that for them. Like they're just calling it the old school term. It's really fun.
Nice.
My one more thing is a video game called Under the Island. Have either of you heard of this game? It just came out.
No. Not at
So
all.
this is an indie game. It just came out on Steam and also on consoles, and it is very cute. It's a Zelda-like, kind of looks like a Game Boy Advance game. Like it looks like the Minish Cap, for people who remember that in terms of a graphical style. And you play as this girl who is like on this island. She has moved to this island and discovers some ominous happenings and has to go underneath the island and find some stuff and figure out how to save the island from dangers and monsters and stuff. But the story isn't all that important.
Is there a hatch on the island?
Are there polar
There
bears?
is no hatch. There are no numbers that she has to press, as far as I can tell. She does not have to move the island, as far as I can tell.
Okay.
But yeah, it's really cute. It's got a lot of charm, got a lot of Earthbound inspired charm, and the gameplay itself, the puzzles and the combat is really cool. I played through this dungeon that is all set inside this greenhouse. It's got really unique kind of ideas and flavor to it. And your main character, she uses a hockey stick instead of a sword, which is cool because it's fun to play around with, and also it leads to some fun moments. Like at one point, you have to go inside of this, it's like a club, and there's a bouncer there, and to get in, the bouncer, I think this is actually the final section of this dungeon, and to get to the boss, the bouncer is like, all right, just got to make sure you don't have any weapons. Oh, all right, you just have a hockey stick, you're good. And so you get to go through. There's a lot of fun jokes like that. And yeah, it's just if you like Zelda likes, this is a really good one, I think. Got
Nice.
all of your classic Zelda tropes, your heart containers and your keys and your items that you collect that help you solve puzzles within each dungeon. But I'm really into it so far, and I recommend it. It seems like it's gone under the radar. Under the Island has gone under the radar, so I recommend checking it out and supporting more cute, cool, interesting indie games.
Cool.
Nice.
Sounds
Yeah.
cool.
All right, that is that for this week's episode. We will be back as promised at the beginning of the show next week to talk about Resident Evil Requiem.
Hell yeah.
Yay.
That's going to be fun. I will see the two of you next week for that.
See you next time.
Bye.
Triple Click is produced by Jason Schreier, Maddie Myers, and me, Kirk Hamilton. I edit and mix the show and also wrote our theme music. Our show art is by Tom DJ. Some of the games and products we talked about on this episode may have been sent to us for free for review consideration. You can find a link to our ethics policy in the show notes. Triple Click is a proud member of the Maximum Fun Podcast Network, and if you like our show, we hope you'll consider supporting us by becoming a member at MaximumFun.org/join. Email us at tripleclick@MaximumFun.org and find links to our merch store and our Discord server in the show notes. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Maximum Fun,
a worker-owned network
of artist-owned shows.
Supported
directly
by you.